Hello, good evening.
Welcome to LEC Update, the show you never thought you needed, and once you've seen it, you'll know for sure.
I'm Eefje de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson.
The LEC is back, so you can spam in the chat because our break is over and it is playoffs time.
Now, this is where I would normally say something about G2 vacation or break. What happened to Mickey's wrist? But those are old and overplayed, so let's try something new. Let me know how these go.
Okay.
Break week. Last week was broken, just like the hearts of Excel fans.
Oh, it's too fresh,
No?
like
Okay. Last week was off, like Misfits' entire summer. Yeah?
Bit of an easy target.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. Okay. Were all our teams playing Vitality last weekend? Because there wasn't any competition. No.
Picking them whilst they're down.
I can do better. I can do better. Last week, Origin didn't show up. So it was just like any other week in 2020.
Nailed it. Good
Thanks.
one, but a little bit of oof. Let's move on to some other news. It wasn't all bad for our teams that didn't make playoffs. Patrick and Alfari both made the first all-pro team, which is a bit odd because I thought LEC players were all pros. Although if you ask Alfari and Patrick about their teammates, they might tell you otherwise. Now, as a top laner and someone on top of the league right now, Finn shared some insight on why his team is so good. Although, I can think of another reason why Rogue is in first place right now.
Well, unfortunately, Bad Lions stopped practicing League in order to start a band and pursue careers in the music industry, and their gameplay has suffered. Although now that I think about it, it actually makes sense why Vedius's casting has fallen off so much.
Oh yeah, well, Rogue qualified for Worlds. Good job, but I would rather lose to TSM than get 3-0'd again in the finals.
Yeah, well, there is one European team on a path to Worlds domination, a team that may not lose another game in 2020. Here to discuss Schalke's miracle run is our #1 fan.
Yes! Oh my God.
Okay, please keep your social distance.
Back up.
So, could you please tell us why we should all be Schalke fans?
Whoa. Let me stop you right there, Christy. Hold it. I'm not a Schalke fan. I'm a Schalke disciple. Being a fan is buying merch. Typing EU is greater than NA. Flaming fanatic for being garbage when G2 is equally just as bad. What I have with Schalke is more than that. It's a lifestyle. The others and I believe in our phenomenal five. For the first half of the split, the year even, they have been forgiven. Now, we'll follow them anywhere.
What you're describing sounds a lot like a cult.
If being in a cult is like using the same profile picture, following the teachings of God Gilius and reciting chants and incantations to grant you unbelievable power, then yeah, it's like being in a cult. Cult of winners.
Okay, so it is a cult.
Yes! Gilius, king of Lee Sin, ascend to godhood and grant me this win. Yes! Listen, this has been a hard year, okay? If there's one good thing to come out of it, it's the miracle run. We need something to believe in after all of this.
I mean, yeah, that's true. We could all use some positivity in our lives.
Which is why Gilius is going to absolutely destroy anyone and anything that stands in his path. Crowdy better hope his social distancing can keep my God away. Otherwise,
Okay, my God, that's Schalke's #1 fan, everyone.
Anyway, for LEC update, I'm Eefje de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson.
Wait, why don't we talk about Fnatic?
Who?
Welcome to Berlin, Germany, home of the summer playoffs. The LEC title and 3 spots at Worlds are up for grabs as we are kicking things off with SK Gaming versus Schalke 04. If you hadn't caught it yet, Schalke is still in the race because we finished the regular season last week with Rogue securing the first place going into the playoffs and the first seed, and Schalke completing their miracle run and sneaking into those playoffs.
Yeah, and I actually turned down my headset as we came into the segment because I wasn't sure if Frost was going to scream again after representing Schalke's #1 fan so accurately. Yes, but it was an incredible run for Schalke, beating Mad Lions to cap it all off. It's an incredible story, a historic story no matter what happens from here on out, but you know all the Schalke fans are hoping for just a little bit longer of a miracle run.
Yeah.
And of course, I think that the really important context is that that was by no means just people falling over sideways. Schalke had to rip destiny into their own hands and go through every single top team to claim their spot in playoffs. So an incredible run.
Absolutely, and it was one of the most unpredictable seasons we have ever had, which is leading us, in my opinion, into some of the most unpredictable matchups and just playoffs as a whole that we had in a very, very long time. And it is now also best of 5s in a whole different ballgame.
And a ton of different factors here. The fact that we are not playing in stage, that you have the top team stepping down, the bottom team stepping up, and just chaos everywhere. But that means that teams are what? A single best of 5 away from Worlds if you win in the top bracket, and 2 best of 5s away from Worlds if you win in the bottom bracket.
All right, let's talk about that, because yes, the playoffs are at stake, but there is no more a regional qualifier, so it's also for Worlds.
Yeah, it's huge. It's do or die, right, for so many of these teams. 4 of these 6 teams are going to make it. Now, those are pretty favorable odds, but when you look at how inconsistent most of these teams have been playing, the strongest, most consistent teams we have right now are Schalke and Rogue. G2 obviously stepping up in the last weeks, but Fnatic's all over the place. SK's doing okay, and well, Mad Lions on a bit of a downturn, so right now, not a lot of safe bets sitting amongst these 6 teams.
That is true. One safe bet is that Rogue is going to Worlds because they've already locked their spot. But if you want the clear odds for any of your teams, any team in the upper bracket, so this one right here, only has to win 1 single best of 5 to make it into Worlds. SK or Schalke will have to win 2. I like those odds. Every single team here has a chance to make it to Worlds. They just have to step up and take it. So we'll see exactly what happens. You can also banter with us. You always can, but you can even better now, because throughout playoffs, you can join us on our Discord channel and show your knowledge in the LEC quiz. It's about everything. It's about broadcast. It's about teams. It's about... You'll see, it's great. So let's come back to these playoffs, stuff you can banter about with us on the Discord channel, but it seems like we have a changing of the guard on our hands, and we often say that. So I also want you guys at home to weigh in on this topic. Are we going to see a changing of the guard? Will we see a new champion, yes or no? And as a caveat, if you've been a long-time viewer, you notice G2 or Fnatic have won every single title in the EULCS/LEC outside of summer 2014, where Alliance took the throne.
Yeah, and, from those odds, you're like, well, probably not. But that said, and we see this every single time, we're like, it's the best year for, a Rogue or a Mad Lions or a Schalke or SK to win. But at the end of the day, it always seems like Fnatic and G2 show up in the finals, and honestly, I'm at a loss. I know that when we did our playoff predictions on Euphoria, we still had G2 as our winner, but we did have Mad Lions go into the final. I think both of us did.
And to be fair, I have a really hard time doubting G2 or Fnatic in any case, because I feel like every time I do, no matter what it says on paper it says Fnatic's going to lose 100%. They go from 0-3 to 3-0. They come out of groups. This is a team that's very hard to doubt. That said, Rogue in their matchup looks like they've got everything going for them. And if there was a year for them to do it, and you said it, we've said it before, but I think this is the year.
And I always do love the narrative of old kings versus new kings. I know that we love that one, but I do think it is quite interesting in that this Fnatic isn't the old kings. The G2 roster, that's the exact same roster that they ran last year. This time around, though, it is completely different for Fnatic. They have Nemesis, they have Selfmade, so it's only really that brand name of Fnatic that weighs on their shoulders, which gives people those expectations. If this was any other team with, a new jungler mid combo, you'd be like, yeah, if they don't make finals, that would be fine. We're still very impressed. But because it's Fnatic, it's like, if you're not the best, you're absolute garbage.
And so would it then make more sense to just say, is it going to be another champion than G2? Is it G2 versus everyone else these playoffs?
It's Caps versus everybody else. This man, once Caps started winning, he never stopped, right? He just kept winning championship. Is it 6 in a row for him now if he wins this one? This man is unstoppable. And right now, G2 have caps, so pretty hard to predict against them.
Good
Well,
point.
look at this. People finally turning on G2 and Fnatic. The thing is
Wait,
that...
no, this is what we see in
they
new
aren't.
champions.
Oh, no.
They say no.
I was almost really excited. I was gonna
People
be like, yes, the
finally
belief in
continuing
Rogue.
to support G2 and Fnatic. Who would have thought?
Come on, guys. Come on. Rogue fans, go.
Yeah, I want to say that's 63%. That's like 60% G2. I'm sure it is. Like the way they've ended the season, you have to think that
Let's
they
be
are in
honest.
pole position.
G2 is definitely boosting that part of the
They are.
category.
For any kind of analytical credibility, at least, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
hope that it's G2 boost.
All right. Well, thank you
What did Rogue
for
have to
weighing in
do?
on that. Can I move on or?
Yes.
No, you're good.
All right, cool. Well, we're also on a new patch. That's actually what I wanted to bring up, the Summer Playoffs patch. It is 10.16. We do have some sad news for all 5 G2 players. Yone is disabled. Sorry, guys. But there have been some key champion changes across the board.
Yeah, just a quick hit on the buffs. Obviously, one of the bigger ones is that Volibear has been nerfed to take it down, Syndra as well. But generally, there's a lot of champions that are getting stronger that I think I would be excited to see. The Jax, the Hecarim, we saw Ziggs a little bit internationally. But more importantly, there's some power picks that are even more powerful that I think are going to continue to remain on the forefront.
Yeah, we really just want to highlight some of the champions that we think will be a big threat, which means we have to talk about Caitlyn. She has not been nerfed yet. She is way too powerful. I expect her to either be permaban or priority picked almost every single time until we see some fine-tuning and nerfs done to the champion.
And the best part is that we already are seeing nerfs on 1016B. We're playing on 1016A today. So Riot Games has already acknowledged that this champion is disgusting and needs to be taken down a notch, which if there was not a clear indicator that this champion should be 100% picked and banned, there just isn't one. This is just it. You have to talk about Caitlyn. You have to pick this champion or you have to take it away.
But the thing is that since we are in best of 5s now, if someone does let Caitlyn go through, then maybe there's a creative option into what you want to take into the champion. Jinx has decent matchups into Caitlyn. People have also gone for the Ashe, try to contest her in the lane priority and then have scaling. The issue is that with Caitlyn's new itemization that she can go into the Essence Reaver and the Infinity Edge and not go for an attack speed second item, that really is an issue for champions like Jinx that do go into that power trough because they have to itemize into attack speed and they don't get as healthy as a curve. So movement speed, buffs across from Caitlyn, itemization buffs, it's just nasty. It's nasty.
It's nasty.
But I got to talk a little bit about top lane, too, because Shen is this guy who kind of flew under the radar for the longest time. Riot chain buffing this champion, just desperately trying to get people to play it. And the most recent buff was finally what it took to get him back to pro play. 20 extra points in the shield at all level. And now we're starting to see this champion really rise in popularity just about everywhere. And is going as far as to blind pick it into about any matchup. I don't think it's that good, but generally this champion offers so much utility, can be very strong, does a ton of damage in the early to mid game. And from the all-star performances we've seen from some of the top laners that are going to be playing today.
What's up, Frosk?
You're like, I don't think it's that good. I think Shin's really good. I think this is one of those cases where pro players have just been forgetting about Shin and sleeping on him. He has really good matchups into Jax and Camille, who are 2 champions that are really powerful right now. So I actually think if people aren't picking Shin, they really need to consider it. So pro teams, Shin. Good champion.
There we go. Finally, the possible wild card in these best of 5s, Lilia, is also enabled. How much are we going to see her? Let me put it that way.
Well,
Or should we banned?
there's no real, like, when we planned this segment, it was a bolder statement to be like, oh, we're going to see a lot of Lilia, but now NA is playing and now the LCK is playing. It's kind of old news. The champion does a lot. She clears the jungle so incredibly quickly. She scales very well. She has some pretty ridiculous utility. Overall, she is absolutely a champion you have to keep your eyes on. I expect 100% pick or ban, but there is a chance that some teams weren't spending their time practicing her, so maybe aren't as concerned.
Yeah, she just fits the meta too well right now because she's a scaling champion and she's so powerful in 5v5. So maybe you can take an aggressive jungler like a Lee Sin early and try to blast her, but like her only weakness is that she doesn't have great gank setup. But because we're in a scaling meta, you can just have an Azir there and you don't need to gank for him anyway. So I think that really helps cover Lilia's weakness.
Yeah, we're talking too slow. Like in a rap, you can nail every word. But when we're talking this slow, it's just...
I actually blew out my vocals in that last segment. I probably sound a little hoarse.
No problem. So a lot of exciting picks. I think that's really cool when you're coming into the best of 5s that you can see that variety and see where the teams go. But in terms of the players, earlier this week, we also announced our Kia All-Pro team. Let's check it out. This is our #1 team. What are the biggest points of contention for my analysts?
We got to talk about jungle.
All right.
Because I know I'm right. I know Shadow deserves that spot, but there seems to be a lot of people disagreeing. And production, if we can just roll the clip of Shadow doing the thing where he like plays real good and he pushes the buttons real good, you're going to understand why this man got first All-Pro. That's the cleanest Lee Sin play we've seen in literal years. Insec himself came back to watch League of Legends.
But it's just Lee Sin.
That's okay. Yes, I agree with that. I think that obviously he can play more champions, like his Ivern was really cool, but the thing is that Shadow, I think, is still limited by his experience in the jungle. Again, he was a role swap player that moved over into jungle, and while he has the credibility that he makes Lee Sin looks like the champion never falls off and can pull out some of these bigger creative picks, we still have guys like Inspired and Selfmade and Jankos that have, I think, a bigger diversity of playstyle, although Shadow is an incredible Lee Sin player.
2 out of those 3 are not in the top 3 of all pro. Frosk.
Yeah, okay. So in defense of Selfmade, because here's the thing. I voted for Selfmade. I think Selfmade has shown that he can play on carries. He can play on tanks. His jungle pathing is incredible. His stats are amazing. He was playing with Fnatic, and he didn't have a mid laner. Like, come on. Inspired played with Larson all year, who gave him perma-push priority. I get it.
But did they just give him a farming champion, let him farm for 20 minutes, and then did they...
They also put him on set duty because that wasn't working out.
All right. Okay, listen. We can talk about this for a while. This is how the dice have been rolled. Let's just talk about AD carry for just a second, the marksman pool. I was a bit surprised. I rate Patrick very, very highly, but I was still surprised that he got that #1 spot in All-Pro.
This is my favorite story about All-Pro, is that the person that is 1 point behind Patrick is Hans Sama. Who did Hans Sama vote for? Patrick. So I'm sorry, Hans Sama, you voted yourself out, but Patrick obviously had a fantastic season, and AD carry was honestly really tough because there were kind of all over the place in terms of performances. A lot of the carries that we expected to be consistent sort of dropped down.
I don't know, I just think it was stacked. I just think we have way too many good ADCs. It's like you can have Hansama, Karzi, Upset, Reckless, Patrick, and that's the big thing for me. It's like, while I think Patrick was amazing, where was Reckless? Reckless has been robbed 2 times in a row now.
But Frosk, you can pick one person who was robbed. Selfmade was robbed, or Reckless was robbed.
I take it all back. Inspired should have been there. Reckless was robbed.
And I agree. This man's on Soraka duty. This man's on Syndra duty. This man goes back to the Jhin to make sure his team can find wins.
He's playing Senna. He's doing everything for them.
Whatever else was happening with Hylissang dying, or Bwipo dying, or Selfmade just farming in the jungle, or both, all of them dying, Nemesis just chilling in the mid lane, Reckless was always there. And so I'm really surprised not to see Reckless on this list in the slightest.
All right, well, we'll see how that evolves. Fnatic Frosk is definitely very mad about the All-Pro.
Am I G2 Frosk or Fnatic Frosk or Schalke Frosk?
Yeah, you're every Frost. There we go. Today it is about SK and Schalke, though, because they are kicking off the summer playoffs in an all-German clash with everything on the line. Genau. And here we are. So SK versus Schalke 04. I think a surprise out of both of the teams, if you had to make a prediction at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2020, who's going to make it to the summer playoffs. But this is where we are. Let's start by talking about Schalke 04. The hashtag SO4 miracle run, and just again kind of emphasize what a heroic run these guys went through to make it here.
It was such a monumental turnaround. And Frost said it before, and I want to say it again. This was not other teams underperforming. This was not people falling on their own swords just in time to face Schalke. These guys had to fight tooth and nail to get here. And if you told me Gilius was the key, the memes write themselves, and they've continued to write themselves. How is this what happened? It's such an unbelievable story, but it's also such a fantastic team. So anyone who's out there being like, oh my God, you're hard pushing the narrative, screw the narrative. Ignore the Schalke miracle run if you want, but Schalke are a damn good team right now. That has to be respected.
And just as a cherry on top, since we just came out of All-Pro, and a lot of people were kind of the question about Gilius and thinking that, oh, he got boosted onto it because they just had a great back half, but he was still on some of those losses. If you go back and watch those losses, Gilius was still playing out of his mind. I think him making All-Pro, being recognized for it, is 100% deserved, even in Schalke's losses. Gilius had a phenomenal split.
Frosk, anything but results-based analysis. What are you telling us? Anyway, yeah, it's crazy. They are the single best team in the back half of the season. They are the best team right now, and they deserve a lot of praise for that. So then let's look at SK, because they also have a very impressive story from 9th in spring to playoffs in summer, but it was more of a gradual tale for SK Gaming.
And I think it just speaks to kind of the consistency of their identity and play style. So I want to give a ton of credit to the coaching staff behind SK, and that's a little bit difficult because obviously we don't necessarily have all of the information and pulley behind the curtain. But I'm going to say Jesus goes to that team, probably other support staff that I'm not mentioning behind him, and suddenly SK have a very clear idea of how they want to play and are really good on executing it. And that makes them super consistent in a league that was so wild and so volatile, earning their playoff spot.
And at the end of the day, I didn't really believe in this roster coming into the split because on paper it didn't look like strong transitions. But the way that they've played it out, as you said, they've been so incredibly consistent. It's been a pleasure to watch, and that's how they earned their spot. When everyone else was messing around, when everyone else was struggling, SK continued to perform week after week, and that matters.
We'll get into the nitty-gritty of their play styles in just a second, but first, it has been a wild ride for SK since their return to the LEC. And for more on that, here's Laure with their CEO.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. Welcome to the Live Like a Pro interview from my smoothie bar, as always, this time with Alexander Müller, CEO from SK Gaming. Thank you for joining me. We don't often have the chance to have an interview. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, congrats at first for reaching playoffs, but I mean, I want to talk about SK as a whole because SK came back in 2018 after missing on EU competition for 4 years. So what ambitions did you have back then when you were joined, and how does it compare to everything you achieved with SK since then?
Well, when we got the chance to come back to League of Legends on the highest level in Europe, our initial thought was, let's be humble. I mean, we have to rebuild from zero. We have to create something. Obviously, the goal is always to become one of the top 3, top 4 teams in Europe, to be able to get out of this region into the Worlds tournament. That is our biggest goal. We never put a 1-year, 2-year plan behind it, but we're ambitious. So we're super happy that we're having a shot actually this year to go far, to enter playoffs and actually have the chance to make a run.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens.
And SK is looking super strong this year here in summer in this playoff. And I mean, you've been around the esports scene for a while now. And I mean, you've been through many iterations of SK lineup. So from the early days to maybe the lineup you have this year for summer splits, what are the most noticeable changes that to you are impactful to make a team succeed? Like what is required now compared to before?
I think a couple of things have actually not changed from when we started League of Legends almost 10 years ago, I believe. Like you still need a very strong jungle mid synergy. You needed that back then as well. You needed great carries on your bot lane. Probably supports were not as much of playmakers as they are right now. And the game changes from patch to patch, and it's a completely different game if you play it today with the champions that are being played and whatnot. Character-wise, player-wise, the dedication was with the players always. Back in the days, nowadays, that hasn't changed. We are happy that we found the glue in this team, in this particular lineup. We had a couple of changes in the back of our heads that we wanted to do between spring and summer, and obviously it worked out for us. It worked out beautifully, because the main thing that we take away from this split is actually that we play League of Legends the way we as an organization want to play. I think it's fun to watch. You can see there's a great concept behind it, and the players are executing.
Tell me about the core values from SK here, because I know Jesse's mentioned like his type of coaching, but what do you expect from the SK lineup when the brand is mentioned? Like, tell me about the project as a whole.
Well, obviously, we're more conservative than others. I can see that. Is it a negative? I don't think so. At some point, we might not be as bantering, entertaining, and not always, jumping on every social media bandwagon and trying to run every meme, disrespect opponents and stuff like that. We don't do that, not for the fun of it. It's more like, yeah, we understand that SK is a historical brand. You're right. I'm around for more than 2 decades. I've seen a lot, but we're not afraid to change the brand either, right? I can see in the future that we turn up the volume a little bit more when it comes down to entertainment and social media. I can definitely see that. But for us in the beginning, we said, let's be humble, let's be respectful towards the league, towards all the opponents, towards the teams that build towards this league in the time when we were not around, 2015 to 2018. And I think it serves us good to have this attitude, and we want our players to have that attitude as well.
And the dream starts today, hopefully for you, with the playoffs and the round one kicking off in a short time.
True.
Thank you very much, Alex, for the interview. And thank you also for all these insights about SK as a whole and how you guys work.
Thanks, Laure.
And back to you, Sjokz.
Wonderful interview. I think Crownshot didn't get the memo about not being in the memes and the whole situation, but that's neither here nor there. I do love it from Alex saying, hey, we have our head in the game because that is what matters the most. So let's then focus on the game of SK, being their play style, how they get their wins. I think first and foremost, both teams play around those team fights, those 5v5s, but that is just the meta. Where are the differences between these two?
I think the difference is the number of options that these two teams have on how they want to execute in these big team fights around Drake Souls. For SK in specific, it's all about Crown Shot, and they figured that out very, very quickly. Now, Crown Shot is your primary weapon, your primary tool, and you just try to make him as powerful as possible, particularly with certain picks.
Yeah, the Twitch obviously incredibly important for him. His champion pool always is going to come back to picking up a carry because for this team, he is the sole most important member. And that means it does limit a little bit of the options that are going to be accessible for him because if you see him on Senna, if you see him on Ashe, you're probably not going to be having a great game for SK. Even if he's good at those champions, it's not what SK needs from him.
And the thing is Crown Shot is the most likely reliable carry, and that's kind of the issue with SK. It's not saying that Zazzy hasn't had pop-off games or Gen-X up in the top lane hasn't carried, hard carried on a volley bear or anything like that, but it's not as reliable as Crown Shot versus when you look at the other side with Schalke and the advantages that they particularly have in drafting. You know, Gen-X being a role swap to top lane, Zazzy being a very young and new face, and Crown Shot having to be on carries. Basically in every single position, Schalke have a huge drafting advantage. They can pull out the Zoe. They have huge unique champion pool in top lane. They can play the Senna in the bot side. It is just way more weapons and way more versatility on how they want to attack the map and pull the win.
And it's important that we talk about top lane, right? Because for the most part, you're right, we expect this to be a game mostly about the 5v5s or steady team advantages built up over time. But if one individual is going to make a difference on the side of Schalke, it will be Odoamne. This man's champion pool is perfectly set up to shut down someone like Gen-X, who, while he has been a solid League of Legends player, has not been a fantastic top laner. So much flexibility, so much diversity in the champion pool. Perfect time for him to pop off.
Yeah, and can you parlay that into how that means that Schalke as a whole is hard to draft against? I was going to say a drafting conundrum because they fire off all cylinders of an Abadaga, of a Gilius, of a Neon, of an Odoamne.
I think it means that usually team strategy have been to attack Gilius. I'm not saying that Gilius has a small champion pool, but just that I think jungle is kind of one of the champion pools that's a little bit more limited than some of the other roles behind it. I mean, outside of like mid lane, but it feels like people can always find something with mid lane. And for me, it just seems that SK, unless they have completely evolved or changed something in kind of the 2 weeks that we've had off or this preparation week heading into playoffs, and both teams just run in exactly, I think that there's a huge advantage given to Schalke because they're not punished as hard as SK can be from being on red side or blue side because they just have more champion diversity from, you know, being actual top laners versus new role swaps, having more experience in mid lane and things like this.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you see this comp behind us as a perfect example. It's very different. It's not about a hyper carry ADC. It's much more about the synergy between the top side of the map. It's much more about Abadage, a man who has been popping off, Faker Dage for a good reason. This man was like asleep for the first year and a half of his career. He played a couple good Lissandra games. I was excited at first, and then he was running it down for most of the series. However, here in summer in the second half, this man has woken up. He has ascended. God Gilius maybe, but God Abadage most certainly. This man is unstoppable on Zoe.
And again, Zoe is so important. And yeah, we've seen other players play the champion, but really only Caps and Abadage have made it work for them. It has an abysmal win record. And Zoe's important because it's a good matchup into Azir. If you have the ability to give away Azir to not lock that one up into the draft phase, then you are unlocked when it comes to drafting. And Abba made some crazy plays. He was known for quite inting and isolated Des. He played a little bit too far under the tower when he first came into the league, but make the crazy plays until they're not crazy anymore. And that's what Abadagi did, and now he has the execution to back it up. He's playing phenomenal.
We don't have a lot of time left. I do need to hear from you. It seems like it's all Schalke all the time. How does SK win the series?
I mean, at the end of the day, SK, if they take it late, Crown Shot is more than enough to carry in a late game 5v5 team fight, and that's what it comes down to for me. Yes, there is a world where new strategies, a lot of practice has changed SK, but if we look at the games we saw in Week 8, it's going to take late game, and it's going to take Crown Shot.
All right, 10-second predictions for each of you. I don't think I'm going to be surprised. Drakos, who's going to win and why?
I'm giving to Schalke. Too many draft edges for them. They can sit back and see what SK has to bring to the table and counter at every single turn.
I'm also going with Schalke. I actually think they're strong favorites here.
All right, let's see. Schalke overcame the odds with the miracle run, but now SK are looking to stop them in their tracks. It is time for the LEC Summer Playoffs.